All right, now we're going to start working on our final 16 rectangle drawing. And as you can see on the cardstock, I have traced my pre-sketch. My pre-sketch was nice and dark. And what I did as a nice little way to do this accurately, when I had this against the window, I just made a little mark at the end of each one of these long lines and marked it at the other end also, as well as the ones on the side, and then used a ruler to connect them because it's kind of difficult to draw that perfectly straight line freehand. Even here around my little borders, I made a little mark at each corner while I was tracing. Then I came back with a ruler and connected those marks so there's a nice straight line to it. And as you can see, it's fairly light. You don't want this to be really dark. You don't want any outlines to show later on. So then what happens is after you get this, remember we had that warm-up that we did where you got an idea of how to change from one pattern or texture to the next right where a pencil line shows up. See, I have a little touch up right there. So if you were you don't have to start in any particular place. I usually start over on the left side because I'm right-handed and I can kind of see what I've done, but it doesn't really matter where you start. Remember, whatever you do in this section, you're going to switch it here. And I'll show a sample or two to show you how you can start to do that. Whatever you do right in that little section, you do something different here. And you go right up to the pencil line. Don't leave the pencil line blank. And you are not going to outline any of this in ink. Okay, so here's where we're going. Oh, and by the way, your pre-sketch becomes a really good place to do a little bit of practice. And I'll show you what that kind of looks like here too. So a couple things overall, you can see that there are no ink outlines between sections. They just kind of switch. Here's a section right here that has the circle going through it and the pathway going through it. One way to do that is to do the exact same thing, but just flip it from black and white to white and black. That's all you have to do here. That's all this person did here too with the brick pattern. It's white bricks with a black outline and then the opposite here. Or you can do something completely different. So let's see, in here, you can see these little walls that were done, and then this little section here was done in little dots that fade away. That's great too. Here, they're both checkerboards, but one's a smaller checkerboard and one's a bigger checkerboard. So that's how you kind of handle it. Another thing to think about is differences between textures and patterns. We want both of those. And here's a texture. These little swirls that kind of all clog together, that's very much of a texture. Where a brick pattern is very much of a pattern. This zigzag pattern, and you did one of these on the warm-up, that's very much of a pattern because you kind of set it up first with stripes. You did this one. I would think that's much more of a texture. Same thing with the spider web effect. That's a texture. Now, we don't want too many of these that you just fill in a bunch of black. Oops. Okay, these are nice, and there are not too many of them here. But you don't want the ones that just fill in black all the time. You want ones that have a little variety of different values. And it doesn't look really good until you get a lot of it completed. So at first, it's like, I don't like this because you don't have it all done yet. So here's one that you've seen that's done. Okay, here, this is much more of a texture. This one has mostly textures. These columns are kind of a pattern, and these have lots of different textures. But here are some samples that you're going to see on screen as well in a Google slide. This one, there's that texture. This one's kind of a pattern, but there's texture inside of it. This is kind of a pattern, but it's not meant to be. The zigzags are not the exact same. And look how we handled that curve right there. We did the exact same thing in here, but just put some lines through there that stopped right there to show where the edge of that circle is. So here's a nice little texture. Here's a pattern, kind of a brick pattern that has the different little parts in each corner. Now see this kind of thing, it's not all connected yet, so it looks kind of unfinished. And this is just a practice sheet is all it is. But when you have blank spaces next to filled up spaces, it just doesn't look good yet. But don't worry, it will once you get it all filled in. So this is much more of a texture. That's much more of a texture. So here's a checkerboard pattern that's kind of done with wavy lines. This is definitely a pattern, these cubes, but it's filled in with 3 different values of those lines that kind of make it look like a texture. So back to your final one, you just have to decide what you want to do. And you can, if you do any setup, do it lightly in pencil. And if you practice, only practice a little bit. So if you practice, just practice in this little spot right here. Make sure you know what you're doing. You can even practice it in pencil, then go to your final. Okay, so I've had some students like finish the entire pre-sketch, and then they have to do it all over again on their final paper. So again, these are just little practice bits here and there. And again, your image, that's the only area that you can use colored pencil. So like on this flower, they use colored pencil, but on this Greek figure, it is not in colored pencil. So that's not required, it's just an option if you like. And remember that idea of that bold kind of outline. You can see this one, the hair almost gets lost in there. If that were mine to do over, I would have kind of done a blank or a colorful outline around that hair so it has a chance to stand out. There you go. And I can help you in class. And many times if you show me a texture or pattern, I can help figure out how to make it. And I can do it under my document camera or in person if you're at school and get you going. All right.